Hey guys, Angelo Esquivel here, back with another review, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Autovizion LED headlight conversion kit to convert your halogen headlights into LEDs. Now before we go over the bulb, its physical components, let's talk about the specifications. Each bulb produces 3,200 lumens. This particular socket type we're working with is 9007. The infamous 9007 socket has been known to have a lot of compatibility issues with a lot of different bulbs, so we'll go over that and how that affects the plug-and-play capabilities. But for now, let's continue with the specs. Each bulb only pulls 30 watts, has an estimated lifetime of about 25,000 hours, but get this, comes with a lifetime warranty. Now remember, lifetime doesn't mean as long as you live. Lifetime, in this case, it's supposed to mean the lifetime of the product. So as long as they're producing this bulb, it is under a warranty. If they decide to stop producing the bulb out of nowhere, well, that's the end of the warranty. At least that's as best as I understand it. Now, let's go over the bulb itself. It is a heatsink fan-driven design. So we have the LEDs up here in the front. They produce heat. The heat is then transferred to the heatsink, where a fan spins at about 7,000 RPMs to dissipate the heat. Now, this bulb temperature is 6,000 Kelvin. However, if you want to change the way the bulb produces the color, it comes with these extra lights right here. If we open them up, you'll see that these have a yellow tint to them. So these will convert the light closer to 27 to 3,000 Kelvin to get that classic halogen color look. Although this is just there for that option, I'm not going to use it. I would rather have a nice 5,000 to 6,000 Kelvin white light. But the option is there just in case, because certain states have laws that restrict the color of the light in where you are. I checked with my local law enforcement. They said as long as it's not blue or any other color than yellow / amber or white, it should be okay. Even though these are not DOT certified and not SAE certified, be sure to make sure you check your laws in your local area, lest you get a ticket for having a illegal bulb. So with that being said, we're not going to be using that little lens cover, but this is where we talk about how this converts everything. So as you can see, it's the bulb connected to a controller, connected to another controller, and this is the end termination that directly plugs into your standard harness, wiring harness for your lights. So here's the thing. This is a 9007 / 9004 socket type bulb. Now, anyone who's dealt with 9007 bulbs know you have to use a retainer ring behind the bulb to lock it in place. That has always been an issue for LEDs because the heat sink prevents you from being able to use a circular retainer lock. Normally, you, with a halogen, would put the bulb in the socket, and then you would then put the retainer ring over the bulb, turn it, lock it in place, and then plug the wiring harness into the bulb. But as you can see, that's impossible to do it like that with this heatsink. So what do? So since the LED bulb here has the heatsink that prevents us from sliding the circular retainer lock in place, we have to get it on in a different way. That's actually not that big of an issue. In this case, you simply unscrew the top here, and you can see it's got a little screw on there, and we slide the glass piece off. This is also how you would get the other colored glass piece we were just looking at on. And then we remove the gasket piece, and we can slide the retainer ring in place. And normally, this is where you would just slide this back on and reassemble. However, notice something. That's not right. It's all the way down. This is as far as it'll go down. This is the retainer lock is as far as it'll go down. The gasket is as far as it'll go down. And the glass piece is as far as it'll go down. You can't screw it in place because something is askew. And I will tell you what that something is. And this has been a constant issue in every single LED light bulb for the 9007 socket that I use on my Mitsubishi Outlander. This is the problem, is the retainer lock itself. So the circular retainer lock is a bit tricky because if you'll notice, it's raised up. Sorry, get my camera to focus here. There we go. So it's raised up at this little portion right here, and that creates a gap. Even though it's only a few millimeters, it makes a huge difference. And this prevents you from using most LED light bulbs that use a heatsink with a fan design. So how do you get around this? Well, at this point, in order to use the bulb, this bulb is no longer plug and play. You now must modify parts of your car in order to use this bulb. How do we do that? It's not so bad, but you have to be willing to do it. And it's worth noting that once you do this, you will not be able to use your halogen light bulbs because that bulge in the raised up portion that we're talking about helps keep the halogen in place. So just know that if you do this, there is a point of no return, and that is something to take into consideration because this particular part is an OEM part only. There is no aftermarket support for this specific piece of plastic. You must buy it from Mitsubishi official dealers or people that have OEM Mitsubishi parts. Either that or you're going to have to go to a junkyard to find another set because this is ridiculously difficult to find and the dealers charge out the nose for them. I'll put the part number to what this is in the description so that if you have a Mitsubishi Outlander, you'll know exactly what part it is in case you mess it up. But let's take a closer look as to what exactly we did. All I did is I filed the raised portions down significantly. So there is no more raised portion, and this gives us a few extra millimeters to play with. And that makes all the difference. So now we can slide this over and it sits lower. That allows us to use the gasket. And the gasket sits lower, and because the gasket sits lower, the glass piece sits lower, and because the glass piece sits lower, we are able to screw everything back in place. It's on there, nothing's fallen out, and the whole light bulb assembly now sits in the circular retainer lock nicely, and it stays snug and in place. Which means now we can install it into our vehicle and see just how well it works. So here we are at my 2003 Mitsubishi Outlander LS, and one thing before I want to start is I just want to note that you got to be careful with this. This glass piece is indeed glass, so it did have a slight crack in it. It doesn't seem to affect the structural integrity, but we'll see how everything works when everything gets put in place. So here is the socket where everything needs to get plugged into. Getting it in is just a matter of lining it up properly. So get that in there, and then we got to line up the points where the retainer lock grabs, which can take a minute or two. There you go. Everything's in place. Doesn't look like it's going to be moving. And now we take the end piece here and we just simply plug it to the stock wiring harness right here. And these wires are pretty long, so they kind of dangle about. And this is, I'm going to need two hands for this real quick. And we have the wiring harness connected. So now that's pretty much all you need to do. It'd be a good idea to get a zip tie and keep these wires out of the way so they don't dangle about and whatnot. So let's go ahead, turn on the vehicle, and see how they look. As you can see, the light has indeed turned on. This is the expected color temperature that you should be seeing. So it doesn't look like the little glass piece posed an issue. Let's talk about how it looks. So this is what it looks like on the garage. Now what a lot of LEDs for headlights have a problem with is having a scattered beam. The problem is the way LEDs project light doesn't allow for diffused light to properly emit itself. In fact, most LEDs in this price range don't diffuse light at all, and that leaves a lot of dark spots in places that are really critical for you to be able to see. I did a review on some other LEDs and it was really bad. But compared to those ones, these are actually not bad. These are pretty good. However, there is an issue with the controller unit that handles the LEDs, and I'll show you. Because you might think, hey, that looks pretty bright. And yeah, that is pretty bright. Well, you go to the instrument panel here with all our gauges and whatnot, you'll see that it's just the regular headlights. But if we turn on the brights, which if we switch this light right here, you'll see that blue light right there saying our brights are on. We come back out and the lights are dimmer. Uh-oh, that's weird. So here's what's happening. For whatever reason, the controller unit is confused. It thinks that when I have the regular light setting for my low beams on, it's deciding to turn the high beams on the LEDs on. But when I turn the high beams on in my car, the low beams turn on. That's not good. And I think I know why. Take a look at this wiring harness. We have two controllers. 1, 2. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the manual. This is the wonderfully detailed manual for the light conversion kit with 3 simple steps. So as you can see, 9004 and 9007 are in the same category, and that's because they're about pretty much the same socket size. So when you order these, you order in a 9004 and it works for either 9004 or 9007. But if you notice, in the diagram it says we only have 1 controller, not 2. So why do we have 2? If we flip the manual over to look at H4 headlights, you'll see the H4 headlights require the wiring harness with 2 controllers, not 1. So what I think is happening is the controller unit is the wrong one. We have a controller unit for H4 headlights, and we received the wrong controller unit for the 9007 headlights, which is confusing the system. Which is why when I have the normal lights on, it's on high beams, and when I turn the high beams on, it's on the low beams. Okay, that's not good. I contacted the manufacturer to try and see if they can send me a correct wiring harness. I'm currently waiting to hear back from them. But let's kind of just skip that for a second. So let's just say, all right, well, not a big deal. I can always just switch between the two now that I know and keep it on the right one. It's actually a lot easier said than done. You'd be amazed how muscle memory and how forgetful you are can affect the way you keep the lights on. So I always end up finding myself turning on the low beams when I'm trying to go on high beam, forgetting it's on high beam by default instead of low beam by default. So taking all that away, let's see how they actually perform. Okay, so the camera has been adjusted to record in the nighttime. So let's talk about how bright these lights actually are. Now, first off, I want to note that the light is properly diffused, especially compared to the other LEDs that I had used previously, which is pretty incredible in terms of the difference. The other LEDs I've used were completely unusable because they had scattered beams and it was just all over the place. This one has a nice even pattern, and this is currently on the low beam setting, even though I have the car set to high beams. So, as you'll see, the usable distance is actually pretty good. We're talking a good maybe 30-40 feet out for usable distance on the low beam. So let's talk about the high beam, which we're about to turn on right now. It just makes it slightly brighter, but what I do notice is it widens the beam angle significantly. So instead of directionalizing the lights straight ahead, it appears to be making the light go more towards the left and right and a little bit higher up as well. So it's not beaming at an angle of the ground, it's beaming straight ahead, which is partly why it's illegal to drive with your high beams on, because that's what happens. Your lights are actually designed to be angled towards the ground so you don't blind the people in front of you. When you have the high beams on, it doesn't do that. It goes straight ahead. So as far as usable light for the high beams, it's a little underwhelming compared to some of the other lights, just because the difference isn't so dramatic, but the fact that you can see further left and right from the vehicle with high beams on is definitely something I didn't expect, but is definitely welcomed, because it is important to be able to see in all directions, not just straight ahead. So let's go back to the low beam for a second, and you see the difference really isn't all that different in terms of forward performance. However, I would say that I would actually feel comfortable driving my vehicle with these LED headlights. The usable distance is actually usable. So, despite these being rated at a lower lumen output than other LEDs, the fact that it has no scattered beams and diffused light makes it way more usable, and the light, you get more usable light. I know I keep using the word usable a lot, but that is very important. If you do some research into LED headlights, you'll see a lot of them suffer from scattered light beams that, even though they're bright, if you can only see parts blotched on the road, it's useless. So I would actually say for a mid-range LED headlight kit, these are acceptable. If you're looking for something for higher contrast on the road while maintaining similar halogen performance, these definitely do the trick. Sorry, I'm going to turn these back on. Car automatically turns them off. So these definitely do the trick. If you want something way brighter than this, you're going to have to spend easily over twice as much for a pair that do a lot brighter LEDs. But I'm actually fairly impressed with these, and these ones are a serious contender. So for that being said, thanks for watching, guys. I hope this was informative. And if you guys ever decide to get these bulbs, let me know in the comments how you feel about them, because knowledge is power. And there's a lot of people out there who get these light bulbs for free, and they give a positive review because they got it for free, and that's not good. This is a real test. I bought these with my own money, and I'm actually pretty pleased with the performance. So, other than the fact that the controller has the lights backwards in terms of high and low beam, I would say these are pretty good. So, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, show your friends, check out my other videos. I got plenty of them. And as always, I will see you next time.